Chapter 10 continues where Chapter 9 left off. Remember, Robert has suggested that they go night swimming after this great party. So off they go. Everybody is happy to do this, which is interesting. Sounds pretty dangerous to me personally. Drunk people going swimming in the ocean, but whatever. Robert is walking and he has these lovers. Now, we're going to talk about these lovers in this video. They keep popping up, and obviously they're symbolic of something. So in this situation, he loiters behind them, and then he gets himself between them. And the first thing I think to myself is that he's jealous of their intimacy. Like, he clearly wants a relationship, I think, with Mrs. Pontellier, but even if it's not with her, he seems like he's a young, eligible man. He should be with somebody. So they are annoying to him. The Pontelliers and the Rentignolles walk ahead. So, these women have husbands. Everyone's paired up except for Robert. Edna could hear Robert's voice behind them, and she wondered why he did not join them. Like, why wasn't he up there walking with she and her husband? And of course, if you remember, he was scolded by Mrs. Ratignol, not to pursue Edna. And so even though it's unlike him not to, I would assume that Robert is pouting. He's upset because he's been reprimanded about flirting with Mrs. Pontellier. And Edna thinks to herself that, he hasn't been coming over as much as he used to, and that she missed him. And she liked the days when there was some pretext to take him away from her, but now, now that he's not hanging around, she kind of misses him. So they're walking in little groups. This is interesting. There are strange, rare odors coming from the water. I mean, I think this just tells me this is a time when people don't usually go swimming. But it also could be sort of a significant sort of symbol of a change is afoot. I mean, I think weather oftentimes is a symbol for what's happening among the people, and maybe these relationships are going to get strange and rare. They are, actually. So it says here, interestingly, that Edna has attempted all summer to learn to swim. I had the assumption up until now she knew how to swim because she and Robert go, it seems, frequently. It seems that what's been happening is Robert has been trying to teach her almost daily, and she has not been very good at learning. A certain ungovernable dread hung about her when in the water, unless there was a hand nearby that she could reach out and be reassuring, which I think is interesting because she seems pretty confident, but in this area she is afraid. That night, so when they get to the water, she starts off like a toddler, stumbling, clutching child who all of a sudden realizes her powers, and she walks for the first time alone. So in this evening, when they're all out there, she actually is not afraid, and she's brave, and she swims out by herself, and she takes a couple strokes, and she feels good. A feeling of exultation overtook her, as if some power of significant import had been given her to control the workings of her body and her soul. She grew daring and reckless, overestimating her strength. She wanted to swim far out where no woman had swum before. Now this is symbolic to me as well. Clearly, this is part of her awakening. She has these abilities. Her unlooked-for achievement was the subject of wonder. Everybody's excited for her because she's been trying for so long to learn to swim. In fact, everyone there takes credit for having helped her. How easy it is, she thought. It's nothing, she said aloud. Why did I not discover before that it was nothing? Think of the time I have lost splashing about like a baby. So this could be sort of a metaphor for life. Things that we think are going to be so hard turned out not to be. And then we're like, why didn't we figure that out before? So then she does swim out alone. Now, as a former lifeguard, this is super scary to me. You don't swim out into the ocean in the dark by yourself. But off she goes. She turns her face seaward to gather in an impression of space and solitude. Off she goes. She had not gone any great distance, thankfully, But to her unaccustomed vision, the stretch of water behind her assumed the aspect of a barrier which her unaided strength would never be able to overcome. So she gets a little panicked out there. A quick vision of death smote her soul, and for a second of time appalled and enfeebled her senses. But by an effort, she rallied her staggering faculties and got back to land. I mean, this is actually how drowning happens. People become afraid. It's not so much that they can't swim. She made no mention of her encounter with death. But she does say to her husband, "I thought I should have perished out there alone," and he completely blows it off. "Oh, you were not very far. I was watching you." Doubtful, in my opinion, that he would even know what to do if she were drowning. So then there's some conversation here. She started to walk away alone. They're heading back now. They've all had their little swim, those who were going to do it, and they're heading back. She's walking by herself. They all called to her and shouted to her. She waved and went on, paying no further heed to their renewed cries, which sought to detain her. "Sometimes," says Madame Lebrun, "I think Mrs. Pontellier is capricious, like silly, reckless, does things without thinking." "I know she is," said Mr. Pontellier. "Sometimes, but not often." So she can get ideas in her head and go off on her own, but he says not very often. Edna had not gone very far before she's overtaken by Robert. So, of course, Robert is there. "Did you think I was afraid?" she asked him. "No, I knew you weren't afraid." In the shade of annoyance, I think she's kind of looking for some attention. She wants someone to acknowledge that she did a big thing, and no one really is. "I never thought of it." "Thought of what?" "Anything. What difference does it make?" "I'm very tired," she uttered. "I know you are." I mean, they're having a spat here. They're definitely arguing about nothing. "You don't know anything about it. Why should you know? I never was so exhausted in my life, but it isn't unpleasant. 1,000 emotions have swept through me tonight. I don't comprehend half of them. Don't mind what I'm saying. I am just thinking aloud. I wonder if I shall ever be stirred again as Mademoiselle Ray's playing moved me tonight." I mean, talk about stream of consciousness. She is just dumping on Robert every single feeling that's tumbling through her head. "There must be spirits abroad." "There are," whispered Robert. "Didn't you know this was the 28th of August? "The 28th of August?" "Yes, on the 28th of August, at the hour of midnight. The moon must be shining. A spirit that has haunted these shores for ages rises up from the gulf. With its own penetrating vision of the spirit, seeks one mortal worthy to hold him company, worthy of being exalted for a few hours into the realms of the semi-celestials, which is like divine beings." So he's implying that Mrs. Pontellier was chosen. "But tonight he found Mrs. Pontellier. Perhaps he will never wholly release her from the spell. Perhaps she will never again suffer a poor, unworthy earthling to walk in the shadow of her divine presence." So he's teasing her. Kind of spooky too. "Don't banter me." So to banter is to tease, to kind of back and forth. And that's what they're doing here. There's an undercurrent of sort of hostility a little bit, but also flirtation. Robert could not explain. He could not tell her that he had penetrated her mood and understood. So he kind of gets her. He said nothing. She had been walking alone with her arms hanging limp, letting her white skirts trail along the dewy path. She took his arm, but she did not lean upon it. So she's very careful with how much physical connection she makes. She let her hand lie listlessly as though her thoughts were elsewhere. Not maybe that's a sort of a play acting. Somewhere in advance of her body, and she was striving to overtake them. Robert assisted her to the hammock, which swung from the post before her door. So he walks her all the way home. And he asks if she's going to wait outside for her husband. And she says, "I'll stay out here. Good night." She doesn't say she's waiting for him, but that she's going to stay. And he says, "Shall I get you a pillow?" And she says, "Oh, there's one here." So the message to Robert is, I don't need anything from you. I'm going to stay outside because I want to. And he tries to say, "Oh, it must be dirty from the kids." She says, "I don't care." So she sends him away. but he's not willing to leave. He says, "Shall I stay with you?" And she's like, "If you wish, don't sit on the hammock. Will you get my white shawl?" So she does admit now, I think she's deciding she wants to stay out there for a while, that maybe she needs a little something to stay warm. So she does send him in to get her shawl. These could all be quiz questions. And he asks her if she's cold, and she says, "No, but I could get cold." Presently, he says, "Do you know what time it is? How long are you going to stay out here?" "I don't know." So she's got something planned. She's going to stay outside. "Should I stay with you till Mr. Pontellier comes back?" And she says, "I said you might if you wished to." So she puts everything right back on him. Like, I don't need you to stay with me, but if you want to, you can. So no multitude of words could have been more significant than those moments of silence, or more pregnant with the first throbbings of desire. So he sits there with her and he rolls a cigarette, and they both feel desire, is how I'm taking that. When the voices of the bathers are heard, Robert says goodnight. So he knows that Mr. Pontellier is coming. She does not answer him. He thinks she's asleep, but she's not. As soon as he's walking away, she opens her eyes and watches him leave. So what a game they are playing. And what is she up to? Well, as soon as Mr. Pontellier gets there, he asks her, why the heck is she outside? And her eyes are gleaming and bright and intense. She's not asleep. And he says, "Do you know it's past 1 o'clock in the morning? Come on." He's like, "Come inside." And she doesn't. And he gets annoyed. He's like, "Edna." And she says, "Don't wait for me." And he gets irritable. He says, "What folly is this?" And she's like, "I don't need anything. I have a shawl. There's no mosquitoes." I made a note here. She is taking a stand. I also made a note. This is her first rebellion. You should just know this, because there are going to be more. This is her first sort of stand against her husband and for herself. This is interesting right here, which kind of clarifies this is what she's doing. He goes inside and she hears him moving around, every sound indicating impatience and irritation. Another time she would have gone in at his request. But, in the past, she would have just done it unthinkingly. As people walk, move, sit, stand, she would have done what he called for her to do. This time, she is not. "Edna, dear, are you not coming in soon?" He tries to be sweet to her. "No, I'm going to stay out here." And then he gets mad. "This is more than folly. I can't permit you to stay out there all night. You must come in the house instantly." And so she becomes even more resistant. She perceived that her will had blazed up, stubborn and resistant. She wondered if her husband had ever spoken to her like that before, and if she had submitted to his command. Of course she had. So he has spoken to her this way before. And this time she is not going to obey him. "Leonce, go to bed," she says. "I don't wish to go in, and I don't intend to. Don't speak to me like that again. I shall not answer you." Good for her. So what does he do? He drinks and smokes. He is not happy leaving her outside. So he gets ready for bed. He gets a cigar. He gets a glass of wine. He sits out on the veranda. He offers her some wine and she doesn't take it. So he sits out there and drinks and smokes. Eventually, Edna starts to get tired. She thinks about herself as awaking from a dream. And then you sort of feel the reality coming back in. The physical need for sleep began to overtake her. The exuberance which she had sustained left her helpless and yielding to the conditions which crowded her in. So I have a star here and I have the word more. I think this is an important quote. Just thinking about, she's been sort of stimulated into this independence from swimming, from hearing the beautiful music that stirred her soul, to taking a stand against her husband. And now she's getting physically tired and she's starting to feel helpless. And I think the conditions which crowded her in, it's more than the feeling of sleep. It's the reality of her life with her husband and as a woman in the Victorian age. So it's getting close to dawn. The moon is low, and finally she does get up and she goes into the house and she says, "Are you coming in, Leonce?" And he says, "Just as soon as I finish my cigar." So, they sort of have an end to that evening. And of course, he's playing a passive aggressive game. "Oh, yeah, when I'm ready, I'll come in," now that she's going. So this continues right on into chapter 12. She slept but a few hours. They were troubled and feverish. And when she wakes up, she feels like she can sense something unattainable. To me, I'm thinking independence is unattainable. She was blindly following whatever impulse moved her, and if she had placed herself in alien hands for direction and freed her soul of the responsibility. So as she starts her day, she is just sort of following her impulses. She is listening to herself. Then we have a reference again to the people on the island getting ready to go to church. And the lovers who had laid their plans the night before were already strolling towards the wharf. So people take a boat to another island for church. The lady in black with her Sunday prayer book and her velvet and gold clasped and her Sunday silver beads was following them. So we've seen this sort of scene over and over again. And so when you have something over and over again, that's a motif, it's a symbol. And so these lovers and this lady in black are always together. And to me, this is symbolic of idealistic love, sort of innocence, not maybe necessarily being aware of what's going on in the world. And this lady in black who is symbolizing the social constraints, the expectations of society, they're juxtaposed here together. And I think that's just an important, it's just motif to notice again and again. The Negro girl who worked for Madame Lebrun's sewing machine was sweeping the galleries with long, absent-minded strokes, and Edna asks her to go awaken Robert. Now, this is a big deal. She had never sent for him before. Robert had always just shown up at Edna's home. This is the first time Edna has asked Robert to come. She had never seemed to want him before. So he recognizes this difference, and when he gets there, his face is glowing. He's very happy that he has been summoned. They decide to go to church together. They have coffee in the house and a roll. He teases her that she often lacks forethought, like she doesn't do things ahead of time. Just another character trait here. And they sort of flirt a little bit. Do I have to think of everything? Leonce says that when he's in a bad mood. I don't blame her. He'd never be in a bad mood if it weren't for me. So she's kind of indicating that maybe their marriage isn't so great. Maybe he's not so happy with her, which is sort of a provocative thing to say to someone who clearly has a crush. Again, we have the lovers, the lady in black. They go to the boat. A new character pops up here. I feel like these characters are always to be in contrast to these more aristocratic people. This is a Spanish girl also going to the island where the church is. She's dirty. Her feet are sandy and there's slime between her toes, so she's not proper. And she's talking and sort of flirting a little bit with Robert and with the other people on the boat. And the lovers are alone. They see nothing. They hear nothing. Again, they are completely wrapped up in their own world. They're oblivious to the reality of the Victorian age. This whole part here is Mariquita, the Spanish girl, sort of talking about Robert and Edna, asking him like, "Oh, are you guys dating? What's going on?" And it's kind of a sassy conversation that's a little edgy, and Robert just sort of puts her off. When they start sailing across the bay to the church, Edna feels as if she were being borne away from some anchorage which had held her fast, whose chains had been loosening, had snapped the night before with the mystic spirit abroad, leaving her free to drift whithersoever she chose to set her sails. So as she's going across the bay, she feels like she's becoming free of the constraints of her marriage and of society. And Robert is running with this. He also perceives a change. And he says, shall we go to Grand Terra tomorrow? This is another island. And he says it in a low voice, which indicates it's kind of flirtatious. And Edna says, what will we do there? And he has all these plans. We'll climb up the hill to the old fort and we'll watch the lizards. And he's like planning dates with her here. And then the next day we can go to Bio Brulo, which is an area where there were like stilted homes along the water. And what shall we do there? Oh, we can go fishing. So he's just making all these plans. He says, then I'll take you some night in the pierogi when the moon shines. Maybe your Gulf spirit will whisper to you in which of these islands the treasures are hidden. So he's referring to the magic of the night before. I'd give it all to you, the pirate gold and every bit of treasure we could dig up. I think you would know how to spend it. Such a flirt. We'd share and scatter it everywhere, he says, his face flushed. And then they all go in together to this quaint Gothic church of Our Lady of Lourdes, gleaming all brown and yellow. Only Baudelaire remained behind, tinkering at his boat, and Mariquita walked away with her basket of shrimps, casting a look of childish ill humor and reproach at Robert from the corner of her eye. She's like a witness. She's a judge. So things are changing for Robert and Edna.